In a dark world filled with deceit, one united voice is crying out. Revealing the truth of God's Word. It's time to expose the hidden truth. And unravel the lies. While we're living beyond Satan's little season. With Sister Crystal and Brother Phil.
Welcome to Living Beyond Satan's Little Season show. We're your hosts,
Sister Crystal,
Brother Phil. Topic today, firmament. What is it? We're going to go over this word firmament, second day of creation. This word firmament comes up. It's really right at the very almost beginning of your Bible. And it perplexes people. It perplexes people because they're like, what is this thing? Right. What is this thing that they call firmament? And so that's what we're going to talk about today, because I think this word firmament, and especially in the more modern translations, have been really not been translating this word correctly. And what I'm going to show you today is what this thing is, because I think there's enough clues in our Bible, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to be like a sleuth today. We're going to study, okay, how is this word used other places in our Bible? And what exactly is this thing that the Bible calls the firmament? Mm-hmm. Now, we're going to start here in Genesis chapter 1, and then we're going to read a little bit, and then we're going to go into how this word firmament is translated in a lot of these other Bible translations around. Okay, because there's a lot of different Bible translations, and they're translating this word all different, all in a lot of different translations. Okay, so let's go and start with Genesis 1, starting with verse 6. This is literally the second day of creation. That God, remember, first day of creation, He created light. So we all know what light is. Okay, we are all familiar with that. And then He created the firmament, and we're all like, what's that? So literally the second thing He created, mystery, figuring out, what is this thing that they call a firmament? So that's what we're going to go over today. Let's start with verse 6 on Genesis chapter 1.
And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the water, and let it be a division between water, and it was so. And God made the firmament, and God divided between the water which was under the firmament and the water which was above the firmament. Okay,
so now let's stop there, because he mentions firmament here, literally in just these two verses here 4 times. Mm-hmm. So obviously this is a main key thing. This firmament is like a key thing that I think it's something that we need to at least figure out what it is. Because if we don't understand what this thing is, then we're not really understanding what the Bible's actually teaching us. Now, I did a little research on how this word firmament is translated in a lot of different Bible translations these days. Okay, of course, the word firmament is used in like a lot of the major, especially the older translations, like the King James, the New King James, the Revised Standard Version, the Revised Version, and my version, my Septuagint version that I use, the Apostolic Bible Polyglot, yeah, it uses that word firmament as well. And even these ancient ones that even predate the King James Version, like the Wycliffe version, yeah, it uses the word firmament too. The Great Bible, which also predates the King James, uses this word firmament as well. And you got, of course, a couple of my favorite Septuagint Bibles, which are the Complete Apostles Bible, and the Lexington English Septuagint uses that word firmament. It seems like all the Greek translations of the Old Testament use that word firmament, at least the ones that I checked. I checked 3 of them, actually 4 of them, and they all say firmament there. But now it's like, but I noticed some of them other translations, some of the newer translations from the Hebrew, are translating that slightly different. Okay, and so I'm going to go over a couple of ways that, especially there's one that's kind of a major way how this is being translated, and like the Bible in Basic English, which isn't really a major translation and not a super popular one, but it translates it solid arc, which I thought was kind of interesting. It's like, where did they get that from? Well, they're trying to define what this is. That's a firmament, right?
Right.
But most of the versions today, at least all the major ones, like the Berean Study Bible, the English Standard Version, which is a really popular version these days. Matter of fact, it's one that we pretty much use mostly in our church here. The Holman Christian Standard Bible, the NASB, and a lot of other versions, the New English Translation, the World English Bible, Young's Literal Translation, and a number of other ones.
The NIV, which is a big one.
Yeah, is it NIV on there too? Yeah, they're using the word expanse.
Right.
To describe what this is. Now, when you hear that word expanse, that doesn't sound like something that's firm. Okay, so the firmament to me sounds like it's something that's kind of firm there, doesn't it?
Well, it sounds like a shield, Now, an expanse just sounds like openness.
Yeah, it's almost like the sky is like an expanse. Not firm, it's just an expanse. So a lot of the modern English translations, I think it's because of their bias here, thinking that, this is just talking about like the sky, right. This firmament. So this is how they're mostly translating it now. But I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute now. The old translations translate that firmament, and a lot of these modern translations are starting to translate that expanse, or actually even a couple of them, like the ERV and the New Living Translation, which is, not really too much of a translation. Don't, use that one. They actually just translated it as space. I mean, so they're even getting worse than that. The expanse is call it space. Like this word is actually just open space. That's all it is, right? What I'm trying to say is that there's a confusion. What is it? Is it a firmness? Something that's firm? Or is it something that's more like an expanse, or something that's like space? Because that's really what you're coming. That's really the controversy here. You can't really go with these Bible translations too much. But you know what? I've got an ace in the hole here. I have the Septuagint, and because I use the Septuagint, I figured out, well, how is this word used other places in the Bible? This is what I do here, right? I'm looking at how it's used other places in the Bible, and I'm going to say, well, does it describe like an expanse, like space, like a lot of these translations are saying? Or is it describing something that's firm? And we're going to go into that here in a moment, but let's go ahead and read the rest of this, because there's a detail given about this firmament here that I think is kind of interesting. Okay, and just these couple verses that we read. That is that he talks about the waters above the firmament.
Right.
And then there's these waters below the firmament. So there's a firmament there. And then the Bible describes here in Genesis chapter 1 that there's waters above that firmament. And there's waters below that firmament.
Wow. Okay,
because it says it right there. The firmament was there to divide the waters above from the waters below. So I'm like going, okay, well, wait a minute now. If this is like space, and how can this firmament divide space? How can space divide this water above and water below?
Right.
There's something that's dividing this water.
Kind of like a shell. It almost sounds like it's like a shell protective, shield kind of thing, a barrier between the waters.
Well, yeah, that's why the Lexington English Bible actually translate that word here as vaulted dome.
Wow.
In their translation, which I think is actually very interesting, because it's sounding more like that's kind of what it is. It's like a vaulted dome there's waters above that, but then there's also waters below that. So there's something there that God created to, of course, some of them just actually translated vault. Vault, in the heavens, And that's, like the New Jerusalem Bible. That's like the Catholic Bible, Okay, so that's how they're translating all this. The point I'm trying to make is like, okay, so there's this firmament that divided waters above it from waters below. We know that water is, kind of liquidy, and so there has to be something that's dividing that. It can't just be like space or expanse or something. There's something that has to divide that.
Well, it's separating the two. So it almost sounds like it's a protective covering.
That's kind of what it seems like. Now we're going to keep reading on in Genesis chapter 1 here. And literally the word firmament in Genesis 1 is actually mentioned 9 times there in that script, in those verses of script.
Wow.
In just Genesis 1. So it's actually kind of a main theme of the creation account that, of course, has perplexed many people because we don't really know what that word means in a modern day English, and it's confusing because you have these translators translating expanse, which, what's that? Or space, or it's translated as dome or firmament. Well, that doesn't tell us. I remember going through Bible college and figuring, what is this firmament that they're talking about? I had no clue because I was a space junkie back then. I kind of believed in outer space and all that other kind of nonsense that is being pushed in schools these days. Because I was a public school indoctrinated kid, so I just thought all that science fiction crap was cool. Back then.
They did push it, and it was something that we really couldn't have a complete handle on because we really couldn't experience it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, I always thought all this stuff was neat, and I can't wait to go into space.
Kind of imaginary because they say it existed, but we really couldn't see it. We just had to trust them on it. But the Bible explains it in a way that if God designed it, he did it for a reason. There's a purpose behind everything that God does. And so understanding why he did that is, and I say it's like a protective covering because he doesn't do things without a design and a reason.
Yeah, let's learn more about this firmament here because, again, it's talked all the way from verse 6 in Genesis 1 to verse 20. And so it gives some detail about what's going on with this firmament. So that, again, this is like a key theme in the Genesis, in the creation account. So it's kind of good to get a handle on really what this is because a lot of people are deceived. And I think that the devil has purposely deceived people into thinking, oh no, we live in like this planet whirling through space. And no talk of the firmament, no talk of anything like that. No, I think this firmament is a key thing that we need to understand and know. It wouldn't be in our Bibles otherwise. Let's go to verse 8 in Genesis chapter 1, and let's continue reading on and get more detail about this firmament.
And God called the firmament heaven. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning the second day. Okay,
so now we understand that part of the heavens was the firmament. Well, we know that also the sky, where the birds fly, is called heaven. And now we're learning that this firmament, I guess see, that's why it's not just heaven, it's heavens. That's why a lot of times when you hear that word heaven in the Bible, it doesn't just mean, oh, that's a place where God lives and everything else. Because it could also just mean where the birds fly. It's used that way.
Right.
Or this firmament above that. You don't know, except based on context, what kind of heaven they're talking about. So I'm just trying to put that out there so we understand. It's like, this is a little confusing because part of the heavens was this firmament.
Right.
Okay, so this is a part of, I think this is what the Bible describes as the second heavens. There's where the birds fly, which is what we call the air. Okay, see, we don't call them heavens. We call them that air. We don't say, oh, the birds are flying in the heavens. We really wouldn't say that.
Right.
But that's really biblically how it's described in the Bible. Jesus even says, yeah, that's the word. They didn't have a separate word for these different areas of the heavens. They just call them the heavens, and you were expected using, of course, context to be able to understand what part of heaven is that. I mean,
right.
And here, of course, the firmament is also a part of the heavens.
Right.
And of course, we know where God resides, and that's sometimes called the third heaven. That's also a part of the heavens as well.
Right.
That's even above the firmament. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of confusing here. Okay, so that's the second day of creation. So if this is space, then there's waters above that,
Right.
which obviously doesn't make any sense. And then of course there's the waters below that, which we see the waters below the firmament. They're called oceans, lakes, rivers.
Right.
You get the idea, right? And even underneath the earth, there's waters below there, and that's why we drill wells and we get water. So there's waters below the firmament, but then there's also waters above the firmament as well. So whatever this firmament is, there's waters above it and there's waters below it. Okay, so I'm just giving you some detail that the Bible's given us. Now we're going to go to the third day of creation and continue on through there, and we're going to see how this all pans out. Because I really think that this is describing a flat earth here with some kind of a vaulted dome called the firmament that protects us from drowning with the waters above the firmament.
Okay.
That's kind of the way the Bible's describing this thing.
And God said, "Let the water which is under the heaven be collected into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And the water which was under the heaven was collected into its places, and the dry land appeared.
Okay, and we know that firmament is called heaven. So there was dry land. The dry land we get is because apparently that we got a firmament up there now. Mm-hmm. You had to have that firmament up there now for us to get the dry land. And that's why it says from the heavens, it's separated from the heavens. So we know that, of course, the firmament's called heaven, the heavens. And so, yeah, the only way we could get dry land to where we can live is we needed that protection by the firmament that was above that. It's kind of seeming like that's how it's described here. And this is describing how dry land appeared on the earth at the time. Mm-hmm. Before that, there was no dry land. It just seems like there was just water everywhere. And even, of course, the abyss, where Satan was bound for 1,000 years, it's described as a watery place too. A lot of water around, okay? So in other words, it's kind of seeming like outer space is really just all water.
Yeah.
That's the way I think it's describing here in our Bibles to protect us from all the water. God created this vaulted dome firmament in order for us to not all be drowned.
Did that dome or vault or firmament that was created allow any water that didn't go to a lower level, I guess you could say, it would dried up, so it revealed the land that was there?
Somehow, the vaulted dome, or whatever you call the firmament, allowed for the waters above to be separated from the water. So it created like air in between that. That's the way it's kind of describing to me by just reading this as carefully as I can.
Well, there's water that was collected into its places.
Right.
So somehow water went, we talk about how water goes to its level, right? So
Right.
Everything is at level, right? Could be because it's kind of flat, But the idea is that, you can even see it on the ground. If there is a dip in the ground, okay, there's going to be a puddle there because the ground is not even. Like, we have a parking lot, and through the years, we've had to bring in rock to fill it up because we've had divots, that would collect water and be puddles. And I'm thinking it's like that. If you had something over something and the air or whatever dried up the water that didn't go into a divot, that would make it to where you could see the land.
That's kind of seeming like what it is. It's sort of like, that's how we got dry land here. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the way it's described. Let's go and continue on here because that's how dry land appeared. Now let's go to verse 10.
Okay. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth the herb of grass, bearing seed, according to its kind, and according to its likeness, and the fruit tree bearing fruit, whose seed is in it, according to its kind on the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth the herb of grass, bearing seed according to its kind, and according to its likeness, and the fruit tree bearing fruit, whose seed is in it, according to its kind on the earth. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day.
Okay, so the third day is basically what's been created here.
Right.
Is now that we have the dry land, because we have our vaulted dome firmament above it, we can now get dry land so that trees can grow and vegetation can grow. So that's kind of what it's describing here.
So are you saying that we live in a terrarium?
I guess you could say that's
It
what we live in.
almost sounds like that, because that's what it. When I've homeschooled the kids, and that's one of the coolest things to make is a terrarium where you have basically a covering over in a jar or in some kind of container, and you plant the different layers of soil and rock and whatever, and then you put plants in there, and the air inside that container helps everything grow.
That's kind of what it's seeming like to me. That's the way I'm reading it too. So I think we're just live like in a bubble, I guess you could say. We live in a bubble, and that's how we're able to breathe. Otherwise, if we couldn't before that, there was just the Spirit of God hovered over the waters. That's how it's described in Genesis 1.
I loved teaching this to the kids when they were little, because I always learned something every time I taught and we read the Bible and read Bible stories. What is something that the plants give? They do something to the air.
Right.
They give nutrients to the air. So in the order in which God in the Bible describes how things were created, it's so methodically designed, like purposefully just integral, that it always made me go, wow. Like, this was such a beautiful design, pattern, plan, however you want to put it, that he did it in a certain, incremental order, in order to it all. And like we would talk about, other people have said that it was a purposeful design, or he is a designer. Our God, we're talking about designer, and how he did things all for a purpose and a plan.
Well, our God's a creator God, not some fake satanic demon God that hadn't created anything and is just a user and abuser. No, our God cares about us. He created us, and he created everything in the universe for us to enjoy. But here he has a pecking order of how he created the world and what we call the universe. And the first thing was light. That started first, and then it was this firmament over the earth, I guess you could say.
The waters underneath and above.
Yeah, and then the ground and vegetation appeared.
Yes.
Okay, so now we have an order of everything, right? So this is before, of course, and we're going to get to the sun, moon, and stars here in a moment, right? Because you got to remember, all this came before the sun, moon, and stars.
Right.
Yeah, we're told in our history books, I'm like, oh no, the earth revolves around the sun. It's like, well, when did that exactly start? Because my Bible tells me that being before there were sun, moon, and stars, that the earth was created with vegetation on it.
Plants came before.
Yeah, and of course that was before the sun was even around. So a day before the sun, obviously. But here, we have an order of how God's done everything. So I'm thinking that, well, wait a minute now, this sun, moon, and stars, which are going to be created on day 4, here are these are just really hovering really over these land areas that God created. Now, I think the land that God created here is much more vast than what we think of in just our little world that we have here. I think this little world that we have here, we think that we have a lot of land around here. I don't think it's anything compared to what God even might have created the land as vast as, and that's one of a lot of things, extraterrestrials that they talk about. There's extra lands, I think, beyond what we see here in our realm, that I think is God's created all that too. And I think that those are kind of being hidden from us, honestly. Okay? Because that's why I believe in two earth eschatology. There's another earth that's outside the land that we live on, that God created here. This is the first day. He created all the land here, including the land that we live on. But I think the land is much more big and vast, because we know that New Earth is huge. Right. It's way bigger. And we even did a show describing how huge the land is of New Earth, and how it was all created in that same day of creation. So this is the day that God created all the land, but who knows how vast of land mass that God created. it could be 1,000 times bigger than the land that we know.
Right.
Which I have a hunch it maybe is, and even maybe it could be an infinite plane. You know, because God is an infinite God.
Right.
And I think a lot of the times these outer space stories where we're going to other planets, we're not going to other planets. We can't go to New Earth after we die here, and that's the promise that we have. But I don't think we're going to other planets. Okay, so let's go and continue on here, because we got now the fourth day of creation showing up, and that's when the sun, moon, and stars get created here. So which means that we aren't revolving around the sun like they're telling you in your school books, because the first 3 days of creation, I know we weren't revolving around there, because according to this, our Bible tells us that God created the firmament, everything before that, the land that we have before all that. So these were designed to work in conjunction with what God had already set up and designed. Let's go ahead and continue reading on.
And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, to divide between day and night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years.
Okay, so here he talks about the firmament again. Okay, now here you're learning, because we know from previous verses that there's waters above the firmament, right? And then there's waters below the firmament. That God designed it that way, right? Well, these sun, moon, and stars, it says here, it says were fixed in the firmament. Okay, so it's got to be something in between the waters above and the waters below.
Right.
Okay, this firmament is something in between that. And this is where all the sun, moon, and stars reside.
That is just amazing.
Okay.
It's like, I don't know, you think of like a protective umbrella, right? What it kind of sounds like an umbrella. And in that layer is where the sun, moon, and stars reside. So when we look at it from underneath, we're looking up and we're seeing it in its all form. You only see the sun during the day, and of course you see the moon at night, and then you see the stars. And I know, everyone has a favorite, the sun or the moon or the stars, and the kids are so cute and they understand what they're, and just knowing how vast and just amazing they are just to look at. I don't know who cannot look up at the sun, moon, and stars and go, that is a fabulous creation.
He talks about the purpose of why he created those things. The sun, moon, and stars, the purpose of them, well, at least one of them. We know the sun, we kind of know the purpose of that one. We kind of need it in order to live, otherwise we'd freeze to death, right? We need the heat from the sun in order to, have us alive. But we know it's also, that there's signs in the heavens, it says, or in the firmament. That's where they were fixed in the firmament, right? So it says they were fixed in the firmament for signs, seasons, days, and for years. So it's like a clock up there.
Right.
So they're designed to be a clock for signs, seasons, and we know that when Christ came, right? There was that star from the east that came over. Remember that? That was fixed in the firmament and was coming over, and that's how the wise men figured out. It's like, wait a minute, there's something going on here, because they were very aware of all the stars and how they all lined, and they saw one that wasn't. Wait a minute, this is a new one. They recognized right away, because they studied the stars so carefully, that this is an anomaly star here. There's something going on there. We need to figure this out. And so they decided to follow that star using sextants and other things that they had. We kind of think, oh, those people were kind of stupid back then. No, they had technological ways of doing things well beyond sometimes what we have today.
They were aware of their surroundings.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty amazing that we've kind of learned through the hundreds of years prior to our existence that they used the stars to map their courses when they would travel by ship.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of times, like in the book of Acts, when there was a big storm and they couldn't see the stars, they had no idea in the ship where they were at. That's at the end of Acts. In Acts chapter 27, you read about that big storm they had there. And they were basically wondering, hey, we don't know how far off course we are. We don't know where we're at because we can't see the stars because there's a big storm.
Which is really amazing because, you can look at the stars at different times of the year. You have, different seasons, as which it says here, that the things in the sun, moon, and stars were made for seasons and years. But you know that the stars are never in the same place every season. They change, except for the one, which is Polaris.
The North Star. Yeah,
right.
The North Star. That's on our state flag, as a matter of fact. You know, we have the North Star and the Big Dipper on our state flag. And that's because, you know, we're in the far north in Alaska here. But the whole point is that, that one star in the North Star is fixed right there year round.
Right.
Year round, that star stays in the same exact spot. That's how you know that a lot of what they tell you about, these stars are, you know, millions and billions of, you know, miles and light years away or whatever, is all ridiculous, because how could that star stay right there and not moving when we're supposedly rotating on an axis and doing all these, we're moving like fast through the
right,
universe.
but through the different seasons, that stays the same, but all the other star patterns are moving every season. They're in a different place.
Right.
Which is such a beautiful thing, because that's one thing you could, and I know the kids were always fascinated, because that's something that just is amazing. Like, how can, our God who created all of that create us? But that is just, we can see that.
So verse 15, he continues on about the firmament, and go ahead.
And let them be for light in the firmament of the heaven, so as to shine upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light for regulating the day, and the lesser light for regulating the night, the stars also. And God placed them in the firmament of the heaven, so as to shine upon the earth.
Okay, so again, twice it mentions that these lights in the sky, sun, moon, stars, are all placed in the firmament of the heaven. That's why it's an important thing to know. It's like, well, what is this firmament that they were placed in? So they were fixed in this firmament in the heavens, and that's where they reside. Mm-hmm. We know there's waters above the firmament. They're not there. So they're not like, you know, trillions of miles away. There's waters above the firmament, and there's waters below the firmament. This is where the sun, moon, and stars all reside. There's not as millions and billions and trillions of them like they tell you. It doesn't seem like that's the way it is. No, there a lot of them are out there, but they're designed to help us navigate things and stuff like that. And that's exactly where they reside. That's where God had placed them, and that's where they stay today.
To regulate day and night, and to divide between the light and the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, let the waters bring forth reptiles having life, and winged creatures flying above the earth in the firmament of heaven. And it was so.
Okay, so in other words, according to these winged creatures, it says that these reptiles having life and winged creatures flying above the earth in the firmament of the heavens. In other words, it's the whole area that is us, is where the firmament is. Mm-hmm. We know the sun, moon, and stars reside in that firmament, along with the flying creatures. Mm-hmm. So here we're learning a little bit more. Not only are the sun, moon, and stars in that firmament, but also all the birds of the air are in that firmament as well. So this firmament, again, it's not that far away from what we think it is. Now, obviously, it's a whole area from where the birds fly all the way up to where the sun, moon, and stars reside.
Right.
But it's not infinite. It's not, you know, millions and billions of light years away. It's really close. And of course, how big is this firmament? We don't really know. Honestly, I think this firmament's huge. Honestly, that's my own belief on this. What I want to go through is we're trying to figure out, well, this firmament, is it just expanse, like they say, or is it something that's firm, that's designed to keep out the waters above? Now, there's only, in the New Testament, there's one place in the Bible that this same word is used, because I use a Greek Bible, and so they called it firmament here. But then, well, where is that? Where else is that word used in? And there's one other place in the New Testament, and we're going to look at that place right now. It's actually in Colossians chapter 2, verse 5. Paul uses this word firmament to describe something. Okay, and we're going to read that in Colossians 2:5, and then what I wanted you to see is that this will give us an understanding of really what this word means, because this is how it's used in the New Testament. And then we'll go over some Old Testament references in other places that this word firmament's mentioned. And we're going to get some more clues. Is this just an expanse, or is it something else? Okay, so let's go ahead and read Colossians 2:5.
For though I am absent in the flesh, yet I am with you in the spirit, rejoicing and beholding your order and the steadfastness of your faith in Christ.
Okay, so Paul was talking to this Colossian church, and he's saying how, hey, I can't be with you right now. I'm writing you a letter, but I can't really be with you. But I want you to, essentially, I'm with you like in spirit, is kind of what he was saying. My spirit kind of is with you, but physically I can't really be with you. But he goes there, I'm rejoicing in your steadfastness. Now, that's that word steadfastness. That's the same word as firmament. Now, you might say, well, yeah, well, what is that? What does steadfastness mean? What does that word mean? We don't use the word, hey, are you being steadfast today? We don't really, in English, we don't use that word that much because that's not a common word. But I looked at how this word is translated in other Bible versions around. And so, yeah, there's no place, here's the crazy thing, no place they use the word expanse there. I noticed that here, that same Greek word's used, that they translate expanse, but here it's never translated as expanse. We wouldn't say that the expanse of your faith in Christ. No, it doesn't say that. Here's how it's translated in most of the main versions of the Bible. Okay, there's a couple of big they translate it sometimes firmness. In other words, your firmness in Christ, stay firm in the faith. We use that word firm in the faith, stay firm, hold fast, right? That's kind of how it's used in a lot of versions. ESV, Apostolic Bible Polyglot that I use, my Greek Bible, the Wycliffe version. Now, sometimes it's used steadfastness, like in the King James Version. That's a little bit more cryptic because in English, we don't really use that word too much. Even though the word steadfast, the word fast means when you're steadfast, it means you're firm.
Right.
You're staying firm in your faith. You're immovable. That's
right.
kind of how that word's described,
Exactly.
right? Sometimes it's translated as being firm, okay? Or sometimes they use the word strength or stability or solid firmness. It's been translated as that. So that's how this word is getting translated. Again, that's not expanse like it's used the other place. So we're getting a clue here on how this word is used. Definitely not describing, this is just air or expanse or anything like. No, it's described as being a firm foundation.
Right.
Okay, that's kind of how it's described. A firm foundation that's protecting us from the waters above. Now, this word is also used in the Old Testament. We're going to go over some examples in the Old Testament to finish up on how this word is used in a number of other places. Okay, it's not used a whole lot, this word firmament, but it is used enough that we can really get a clue on what's going on here. Okay, let's go to Exodus chapter 24, verse 10. And this is where God is actually there with the children of Israel, I think around Mount Sinai there.
Right.
And they're basically showing them a little bit of who he is and all that. So let's go ahead and read that one. Exodus 24, verse 10.
And they saw the place where the God of Israel stood, and under his feet was, as it were, a work of sapphire slabs, and as it were, the appearance of the firmament of the heaven in its purity.
Okay, so here we get an idea that the firmament is something that is like a clear. It sounds like it's kind of clear, like it's
like a blue. Because sapphire is blue.
Right. It's sort of like a clear. Has clarity to this firmament. Okay, this is a clue that we're getting here from this passage of scripture, describing what essentially the purity of God. So this firmament is pure, and we know that our God 100% pure.
Right.
So this is one clue that we're getting about this, what this firmament is. Right. Okay. Now let's go to Esther. Interesting. The book of Esther just has this word firmament, but it's not describing the place in the Bible that we think it is. It's like, that word steadfast. That isn't really the firmament, but it's translated firmament because it's talking about steadfast, right? Okay. Esther chapter 9, verse 29 uses this word. Let's go ahead and read that one.
And Queen Esther, the daughter of Abinadab and Mordecai the Jew, wrote all that they had done and the confirmation of the letter of Purim.
Okay, so in other words, this confirmation letter, this is when she saved everybody, right? All the Jews were about ready to get slaughtered by Haman. If you can read that story. I don't have time to get into it. But then she wrote a confirmation letter. That's that word confirmation. Is firm. In other words, it's to confirm. It's like when you see the word firm, confirmation, that means we're making sure that this is going to happen. That's what a confirmation is, right? It's solid. It's not going to change. Things are it's immovable.
Right.
That's kind of the way this is described here.
Steadfast.
Yeah, again, steadfast. But
Right.
that's how they see. That's what I'm saying. I hate the fact that the Bible, they translate all these different ways, but it really means all the same thing. It's something that's steadfast and movable.
Right.
Right? Can't be moved, can't be shaken. Right? Okay, let's go ahead and read. Now, this word is used in Psalms. Psalm chapter 18. And there's a number of instances in Psalms. We don't have time to go into all those, but I'll just give you one example here. Psalm 18, verses 1 through 3. This is, of course, a description of loving God and our relationship with the Lord and all that. Go ahead.
I shall love you, O Lord, of my strength. The Lord is my firmament and my refuge and my rescuer. My God is my helper, and I will hope upon him, my defender and horn of my deliverance, and my shielder. In praising I will call upon the Lord, and from my enemies I shall be delivered.
Okay, he's describing the Lord as being my firmament.
Yeah.
Okay, this is kind of interesting because this is getting us, in other words, my secure, essentially, and he goes on to describe it, my refuge, my secure foundation.
Right.
He's using all these phrases to describe the same thing. So now we understand. It's like, it's not just air. You wouldn't describe, oh, God, you're my air. It's like, well, yeah, we could describe him that way, but here it's describing that, hey, I need a foundation. I need something that's immovable, and God, that's what you are to me. Something that's solid, that can't be penetrated. Like, you're my fortress.
Right.
Here it's kind of describing God as being like some kind of a fortress that we're inside of now because we put our trust and faith in God. That's how that word's used. So this is obviously not something that's, it's just an expanse or whatever. No, this is like something that's solid, that's protecting us from something else out there. And of course, in David's example here, it was all these enemies that he had around him and all that kind of stuff. He was relying upon the Lord's firm foundation, his strength to protect him.
Right.
And it's describing him as being a firmament there. Right. Okay, let's go to Psalm chapter 71. Here's another one. Verses 2 and 3. Go ahead and read that one.
In your righteousness, deliver me and rescue me. Incline your ear to me and save me. Be to me a protecting God and a stronghold to save me. For you are my fortress and my refuge.
Okay, and that word fortress, that's really the same word as firmament. Okay, so in other words, he's describing God as like, you're my rescuer, you're my fortress, you're the one that's protecting me. This is how it's described. Okay, so what I'm trying to explain to you is this is obviously something that's solid, it's impenetrable, it's something that's protecting us, obviously, from the waters above, just like that. Okay, Ezekiel. Actually, Ezekiel has a number of examples of firmament there. We're just going to give one here today. We don't have time to go into all of them. Ezekiel chapter 13, verses 4 and 5. Go ahead and read that one.
As foxes in the desolate places, so are your prophets, O Israel. They stood not in firmness, and they gathered not flocks unto the house of Israel. They did not rise up in war, the one saying, in the day of the Lord.
Okay, so here that word firmness is used to describe these false prophets that were around. Yeah, these false prophets, that they were telling everything. They were not firm in their faith. They weren't. They were just wishy-washy. They're describing them as being like, they didn't stand in firmness. They weren't standing firm in the teachings of God, in the faith. They were just wishy-washy. So in other words, it describes them as being not firm,
right?
Not a firmament kind of thing,
no.
But as like somebody who's like
they were wavering.
They were wavering as like shifting sand.
Yes,
that's kind of how these guys are described here. It uses that. That's why I'm saying by reading the Bible, that's one of the reasons I'm recognizing that we can figure out what these words mean just by how they're used all over the place in these different areas. We don't have to guess. We can actually read our Bibles and we use the Bibles to define what these words mean.
Right.
That's all I'm doing here. Now let's go to one last one we're going to go into before we get done. We're going a little long here on this one. But let's go to Daniel chapter 12. And this one, I've kind of read Daniel 12, 2 and 3 before. We're going to read this one again. And he uses that word firmament here. Go ahead and read that one.
And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to reproach and everlasting shame. And the wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and some of the many righteous as the stars forever and ever.
Okay, so in other words, I guess here's what you learn about at the resurrection. Okay, he's describing the resurrection event, right? That everyone's going to get a resurrection. I've talked about that before. Right. Wicked and righteous, we're all going to get resurrected. But the wise, that's people that are righteous, that accepted the Lord and all that kind of stuff. The righteous people, we're the wise of this world. Most people are the morons and idiots of this world because they don't accept Christ, and so they don't realize what they're giving up.
Well, they're the deceived ones. That's what the Bible calls them. And it's sad because they're believing in something other than God. So that's why they're unwise and they're deceived and they're kind of wishy-washy, like those false prophets. They just cannot see the truth and hold fast to it.
So we're described here, the wise, essentially the righteous, as being as bright as the firmament. That's because the sun, moon, and stars, and all the brightness of the sun, moon, and stars are in the firmament. That's how we are. The righteous are gonna be, essentially at the resurrection. So I just wanted to finish off with that one because this is an exciting times that we're living in. Realizing that what they tell you and all the deception that goes on with where we're living. We're not flying through space and hurling through space on a planet like we're being taught. Instead, we live on a flat, stationary plane protected by a vaulted dome that is protecting us from all the things that are out there, right? And we have sun, moon, and stars that are in the firmament of heaven that are helping us with signs and seasons and years and all that kind of good stuff. That's really what the firmament is. It's not space. Outer space isn't firmament. Outer space, as far as I can tell, doesn't sound like it even exists as described in most of the scientific literature these days. That's not firm. Okay? Right. Firmament is something that's firm. It's a firm foundation protecting us from the waters above.
Right.
I'm glad that God has made this world for us. This world is a wonderful place, and he's made this especially for us. What the deceivers of this world are trying to get us to do is that we're not a special place. We're not a special people. They're trying to deceive you into thinking that you're nobody special when everything God did, creating the sun, moon, and stars, creating this world for us to live on, was all for us. And this is the part that people just don't get when they believe in all the scientific garbage that they're spitting out these days. It isn't science at all, but it's a religion of demons.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to put out there. And this is why I really didn't want to do a show on that. I believe that we're living on a flat stationary plane with a vaulted dome above us. But I wanted to go into this because I think that's already been covered enough under a lot of other people. A lot of good YouTubers have done, a bang up job on all that stuff. But I wanted to bring up this idea and this concept that we're being protected. God has a protective shield over us. called the firmament. And that's where the sun, moon, and stars are, protecting us from the waters above. And so if we understand that, we know that we have a God that cares for us, is looking out for us, and he resides above that. All
Right.
that. He's looking down on us, and he's keeping an eye on us. He knows the struggles and trials that we're going through. We don't have to worry that we don't have a God that cares for us. We have a God that cares very much for us, and he wants the best for us, and he wants us to be the wise of this world.
He wants us to remain steadfast, stand firm in him and in our faith, and trust that he's got a plan for us and for our future. And he does things in a way that it's like he's the most caring parent we'll ever have. And he's always looking out for us. He's designed things in our immediate surroundings so that we can see him on a daily basis, trust him, and know that he's with us.
God wants us to have a firmness of our faith, basically a firmament of the faith. That's what he really wants. That's what the Bible actually states. Firmament of the faith. That's what we need to be having. Just like Colossians, they were told, hey, be firm in your faith. Have a firmament of your faith. That's what we need to do every day, because we're being lied to constantly, and I'm trying to get people out of the deceptions of this world. We live on a very dark, deceptive plane, okay, covered by firmament. Okay, that's what we live on. We live on what's known as first earth, but we have hope that we're going to new earth. That's after, if we stand fast, stand firm, firmness of the firmament, right, in our faith, but we have to overcome the wickedness of this dark realm.
Right.
We must be vigilant. We must be manly. We must be fortified, standing firm in the faith, doing everything out of love, not only because it's biblical,
But because it glorifies God.
Join or contact us at satanslowseason.org. This is a non-copyrighted Living in Satan's Low Season production.